than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the 21st century. We're about to exit the matrix and wake up to motherfucking reality. So thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in again this week. We've got a special guest. We've got Sarah with us today, and Sarah's based over on the other side in New Zealand, in Auckland. Is that right?
Correct.
Awesome. I'll hand it over to you to talk about yourself and, you know, where you're coming from, and yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, awesome. What an intro. I love it already. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Kelsey, and I host a podcast called The OneUp Project. Been doing this for just over a year now, and I basically started it because I had a conversation with someone who told me I could basically make my KiwiSaver a whole lot more effective, and KiwiSaver is like our retirement scheme here in New Zealand. And I didn't know that it was, didn't even know it was an investment. First of all, I thought it was just a savings account. I didn't understand you could change things like your fund or your provider in order to get larger returns long term. And I thought that was ridiculous that no one had taught me about that I had pretty much zero financial literacy, and that I couldn't really find any resources I related to or found interesting that were just straight up easy to understand and not intimidating. And there was also a massive stigma around money, people talking about money and financial literacy. And I hated that because I've always been into talking about money. I love hearing how people make their money, how they lose it, everything in between. And it just felt like there's a bit of a gap with people being upfront and honest with those conversations on either side, whether you had a lot of money or didn't have a lot of money. So I've kind of created this resource to be a really safe place that people can listen to. So it's a podcast that people can listen to, and we cover everything from financial literacy to now broader topics moving into self-development and career, and kind of analysing these people's lives who I get on and figuring out what they've done maybe a little bit differently, and trying to help people find little golden nuggets and gems of information within that for their own life. But yeah, ultimately, it's just supposed to be a really relatable resource for anyone and everyone to come and upskill a little bit and get the one up on whatever they're doing currently in their life.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like you're doing really good things over there.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's going well.
And so your background, like, you were an accountant, is that right? Or you were studying to be an accountant, or?
Yeah, so it's like an interesting kind of story because I had a scholarship to an accounting firm when I was in high school, and they sort of just gave this scholarship to high school students who showed promise in wanting to be in business or accounting. And then I got to uni, and a part of my contract was that I had to major in either accounting, finance, information systems, and what was the last one? Economics. So all the boring ones. And I didn't want to do any of those. But I felt like accounting would sort of be the best one to cover a broad range of things. And I could use it for, a whole lot of different things if I wanted to own business, etc. So I decided to do accounting, and then I did an internship when I was in uni, which then led to a grad role. Very lucky to have that opportunity. And I was told I was very lucky. So I jumped straight into that outside of uni, not really thinking about what else I would want to do with my life. And then I pretty much knew on my first day that I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't know kind of where I would end up, but I thought I would just go along with it anyway. And then 9 months into the grad role, I was like, I actually hate this. So I decided to spend like 4 months unemployed, creating a kind of freelancing, contracting social media business for myself. And then now I'm in a marketing role and I'm loving it. So yeah, started off in accounting for a very short amount of time.
Okay, cool. And so with your podcast and who you bring on normally, like, what would be like probably the top 3 things that you've seen over the time that you've been doing your podcast that stand out to you?
Yeah, that's a really cool question, actually. There's 2 things that come to mind straight away. And that's kind of what I love about having guests on, is that you kind of identify patterns and trends in the different types of ways that people think, and you can often pick out little things that certain people have done that have led them to a certain destination or success that they've had. And 2 of those things, really broad but super relevant, are 1, take risks, and 2, be curious. And I've just found that often, so many times, guests have said that they wish they took more risks when they were younger, for a whole lot of different reasons, and also just got educated further on as much as they could and were just curious about different things. I think it's because so many people when you're younger, you struggle with finding out, like who you are and what you want to do and who you want to be. And often the solution to that is just trying a whole lot of shit and seeing what is going to work out. So yeah, those would be the two probably biggest things. And then on top of that would just be generally to understand yourself and stay true to what it is you want. And I've kind of decided to live my life like that, where I'm following what it is I value and what feels most right to the person I am. And I found I feel so much more fulfilled every day in my life because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Awesome. I think, the system trains us to go to school, become a good obedient tax slave, we go to a 12-year indoctrination camp, and then, we're now ready to fit into the world and become, a good employee. But, rarely do people, when you have a child, you send the kid off to school at 5 years old. That's their best learning years. And then you're slapping them down, letting a bell ring. They go off to class. They have to ask permission. They conform to society at that point. And, I guess that, living your best life is something that a lot of people don't realize. And I guess a lot of millennials are screwed from that front. They're stuck and trapped and, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're put in this box. And I remember something one of my podcast guests said to me. He started off just sort of creating his own little business and then turned into this huge successful entrepreneur now. And he did a careers, how there's a careers advisor at school and you go to and they kind of tell you, what your life's going to look like. It's always wrong. But he did a quiz and it said it literally told him that you could pack boxes in a warehouse and that was going to be his future, low decile school, not very wealthy area, et cetera, that kind of, they put him in a box that would be the extent of his career. And it just makes you think, if that's seriously their definition of being realistic about what a kid's options are, doesn't matter where they're coming from, then no wonder people grow up with a lack of self-belief and don't think these things are possible.
It's funny you actually said that because it brought up a thought. I remember once, I went to 5 high schools. I couldn't fit into school. It wasn't for me. And I remember the deputy principal said that I'd be lucky to get a job scrapping cars, working at the local scrapyard for wreckers. Yeah. And I was like, I read that. It's funny. And it's the system is just designed for conformity. And if you don't fit in, then stitch you up and throw you out. So, yeah.
Totally. It's so sad. But then look at where you are now. And it's awesome to be able to kind of look back on that and be like, wow, I can't believe how wrong that person is. It just proves anyone is capable of doing it.
Yeah. That's something that I always said, if I can do it, if anyone can do it, it doesn't matter. Everyone's got the level of success in their own field and what they're doing, whether it's a sports style. I hate sport. I've never played sport in my life. I'd be the gumbiest guy. I'd get
yeah,
do something. But if someone is good at that, it's the focus, the commitment, the determination to perform well at what they do. And I think in the world that we live in, we've got technology out there, we've got social media, we've got more pressures out there, there's freedom. If I was to think about doing what we're doing right now on this call, right, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would have to put an ad out into a newspaper and then get 50 people to come into a room and then talk to them about something, and it'd have to be all structured and stuff like that. And it's I guess we've never been in a world where we've got access to technology, where we've got access to information, where we've got access to resources. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I first started the YouTube channel, there was no YouTube. There was no Facebook 12 years ago. So, the content and the data, you can get the information. I think there's a lot of resources out there to break those molds and be able to, go on to different courses. And it's an exciting time to be alive. And a lot of people, I guess now in lockdowns and, the world of Corona and stuff like that, people are sitting at home. There's opportunity, I guess, for people to improve themselves, learn, educate, get access to those resources, and be able to expand and improve their life. So, I guess from your side, do you have any career lessons for millennials that, for me, when I first started, I was like, I'm just going to work 2 full-time jobs for 10 years. I literally worked 2 full-time jobs between the age of 17 and 24. It was 7 years, got in, earned money, bought shit, built my portfolio. I guess I never had a thought for a career.
I think what you were talking about before, Nathan, in terms of, we're going to work hard, and that kind of hustle is so admirable. And I think if people have that already within them and they know that that's what they want to do, like live into that and 100% do it. Don't conform to anything that society is telling you around having to go to uni first, blah, 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 blah. Like if you're ready to go and ready to work hard and make changes, then just absolutely do it, grab it and go for it. I think a lot of other people feel maybe not as brave as that, and they feel early on that they have to go to uni in order to like make a successful career, and they're not sure what to do. And for me, it was weird because I've always considered myself the kind of person who is willing to take those risks and doesn't necessarily care about what society has to say about the right way to do things. Like I've always just been like, I want to do what I want to do. But I never once stopped and thought, is going to uni actually what I want to do? I was always sort of a kid in school that was, smart enough to get decent marks. And I was always kind of like mature for my age, blah, blah. And so people kind of expected that I would want to go to university. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I do want to go. But then I think about it now and I'm like, was that ever actually a decision that I truly made? Or did it just feel like the next step that made sense because I was always considered like smart as a kid? And so I think the first thing there is just stopping for, 5 minutes at least and actually thinking to yourself, is what I'm about to do, whether it's commit to university or commit to debt or whatever you're doing, is it actually something that I want, or do I feel like that this is necessary because other people have told me that this is what I should be doing, or I've been taught to do that? So I would just stop and have a think about it for a second, and then I would act based on that. And I would also, if one thing I would do earlier would be seek out the advice and the opinion of people you admire. A piece of advice that someone gave me on one of our podcasts was like, why would you ever listen or take advice from someone who lives a life that you don't want to live? And after I thought about that for a second, I was like, oh, that's so right. If you've got family that are always around you doubting you, but you look at them and you would never want their life in a million years, or friends that do the same thing, why the hell would you ever consider their opinion or take it as something that, take it on in your own life? So I think actually seek out the opinions and the life experiences of those I admire. I feel very lucky to have a podcast because I get that opportunity all the time, and I can kind of handpick exactly who I would want to hear from and whose life experiences I want to learn from. But that's the benefit of podcasts, is that you can learn alongside the person who's hosting, or you can learn from a different range of people. And to your point earlier, Nathan, like seeking out content, it's everywhere. Like there's so much content for free online. And I know people always say that, but it is true. And if you go to the people you do admire, like podcasters or YouTubers, and ask them questions, if you have that kind of access to them, like what are your favorite go-to resources, podcasts, YouTube videos, blogs, etc., because they will give you things that align with them. And if you align with them, then it's only going to open you up to a whole new bank of content that you can access. So yeah, I would definitely seek out the advice of people you admire, stop and think about what it is you actually want, and give yourself some time to get to know who you are. The most like revealing time of my life was the 4 months in between when I quit my accounting job and started the role I'm in now. I've completely switched careers now. I'm in a marketing role. But the 4 months, although it was really confronting and quite tough, I feel, for me mentally to kind of work through, okay, I've just given up this really amazing grad role that everyone told me I should be grateful for, and quit that to now be pretty much unemployed and then move on from there. It gave me so much space to think about what I actually wanted outside of university, outside of high school, outside of anyone else's expectations. And then I was able to develop my own values and wants and act on that, and also not settle, because I think for me was like, okay, if I'm going to leave this accounting job that's so secure, that's so guaranteed, that's just done so much for me in the lead up to this, if I'm going to leave this, then I'm going to definitely make sure that I'm not settling for anything else in future, because I may as well stay here if I'm just going to settle for the next shitty job or thing that I don't enjoy. So yeah, making sure that you are also kind of disciplined in your approach to your next career path and work out what it is you really want. But then in saying that, being open to opportunities and being curious. Yeah, I feel like that's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think that, like, if you go back to your childhood and you look at your teachers that are telling you to be a career or getting put into that box, or look at, the life where you're getting advice from. I remember getting advice from someone, and it was actually, I won't go and say who it is on here because someone might make a relation back to who this was, but someone came to me and they go, I remember I was at like 3 little crap properties that I bought in Western Sydney, and the numbers were all stacked up. I had a business plan on how I was going to build my portfolio and how to get out of the workforce. And someone had turned around to me and said, Nathan, why would you buy those crappy properties for? You should go buy a bigger one. It could be a studio in a better location. I'm like, hang on a second. And I thought about their mindset as to why they would have bought that property versus, like, the property was like a 600 grand property where mine was like 3 at 200 grand. But my 3 at 200 grand bought in, $1,000 a week. The other 600 grand one would bring in $400 a week. So the numbers didn't stack up. Mine was based on factual of getting me to where I wanted to be. The other person's was based on emotion and what they felt. And I realized, like, you're not living the life of the person that I want to be. So I can't take anyone seriously. They're not living the life of what I want to be. How can I go and be that person? It's like going to a gym and getting a personal trainer that's, 100 pounds and eats, I don't know, it's big, like a big weight, like that eats, Maccas all day, and it's like a beast. Like, you wouldn't be able to take that person serious. And it's like, you want to be able to, if you're going to get advice on health, you want to go to someone that's healthy. If you're going to, get advice from someone that's going to be financial, you're going to take from someone that's financially healthy. You want to take advice from someone that, is a guide or a, advisor or whatever. You want to take it. So getting back to what you're saying about the financial information that you hear out there, I hear a lot of financial planners which are broke, right? I don't trust them. Growing up as a kid, my mum always said, make sure you don't trust a used car salesperson, don't trust an insurance salesperson, don't trust a real estate agent. And I think to myself, to be an insurance salesperson, you must be a financial planner, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the advice out there is given that's not in line with what my advice, what I need, or what's needed and required out there. So I think it's important to be careful of that. And you made a good point with settling as well. Like, so many people just go throughout life and they settle. They're like, oh, I'll just do it. I'll just do it for the greater good, or I'll do it. You see it so much on the news, the media, and the brainwashing, the propaganda that's out there today. People are just settling and they're accepting, and they're just, people go through life like this, and the system is designed to keep people trapped and not living at their fullest potential. So whatever it is, whether you want to be the best podcast host out there, whether you want to be the best golf player out there, the best, I don't know, pilot out there, like, go and be the best, and go and seek and not settle until you actually find the answers to what you're looking for to get to where you want to be is important. And I think there's a lot of people that are confused out there, especially going out there. You said you got a scholarship. I remember actually, my dad, I was 16, my dad died of a heart attack. And when he died, there was something that was in his super that was like, if I was to be working in a school or in education until I'm 25, they would have given me like 30 grand a year worth of education. And my mum said to me, she goes, go to university, get a good job, go to university, and I'll buy you whatever car you wanted. I wanted a Honda S2000. It was like a sports car at the time. It was cool back then. And she was okay. And I thought about it, and I was like, I'm never going to go to university because it's a trap. I feel like it's a trap. So I left all this money, I left all this stuff aside, which I could have had a free university, all this sort of stuff, because I just felt like it's a trap. And I look at people today, they might be finishing school, they might be 17 years old, 18 years old. They can't go out and get a business loan. They can't go out and get a car loan. They can't go out and get a real estate loan, but they're allowed to go out there and get themselves $100,000 worth of student loan debt, right? Where if someone was to go bankrupt, they wouldn't even be able to wipe that debt ever. It's still attached to them. So, and you're 17 or 18 or 20 years old, and you go do your course, and you end up finishing your course, and you're like, I didn't want to be a doctor. And I guess, like, looking at millennial around money standards and whatnot, maybe some feedback from your side as to what you see out there and some tips for our viewers.
Yeah, totally. I think there's so many different things out there to do with money and financial literacy when it comes to millennials. I think this is part of the overwhelm, is that people don't know where to look because they're seeing different things in the news, especially, or on social media, about money or about buying a house or about debt, and you don't know where to start, you don't know what to believe, and I think it can be really hard to kind of pick a starting place. And so often what I tell people is if you're starting from zero with your financial situation, how I would approach it is just pick one thing, just pick one thing to focus on. Don't feel like you need to sort out your investment portfolio and get on the property ladder and sort your student debt and organize your budgeting situation all at the same time, because if you think like that, you are going to procrastinate and put it off for a lot longer. And I guess lucky the people who interact with me a lot of the time are already quite interested in financial literacy and they are motivated to do that. But what about the people who aren't motivated to do that and aren't in the slightest interested in having a conversation about money? Those are the people that we need to, I guess, look out for and help. And a lot of the time, I try to make my content really approachable so that those people do find it easy to start. And so what I would say there is, just to pick one thing to focus on and move through there. And I think there are many reasons as to why some people find it, some people have said it's hard for millennials to do certain things in and around money, and lots of debates going on around, why it's so hard to get on the property ladder, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think a lot of this comes down to now, FOMO and fear of missing out, and how social media and the news affects our perception on a lot of these things. And so I think that it's important to pick one thing and then figure out what it is you're wanting and why out of it. A big thing that I speak about with financial advisors over here, or people who have made big changes with their money, is often a lack of motivation comes from having no why or no reason. I know for me, I've got a friend who she does not even want to think about her financial situation. She spends her whole paycheck and is fine with that, and she doesn't want to know about saving or investing or anything. And she doesn't have a motivation to do that. There's absolutely no why for her to want to do it. She's not interested in property. She doesn't feel like she needs to save for anything. And I think that's a massive, massive problem. And a lot of a reason as to why young people aren't motivated to save is because nothing is relevant right now. You think, I'll sort my retirement in time. I'm so young. I've got ages to deal with that. Same with getting on the property ladder. It's a bit different now because people are getting on it so much younger, but people used to think, it doesn't matter, I'll do that when I do the other norms of society and get married and have kids and buy a house, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the time these things aren't relatable to people in the near future, so then they put it off. But what I would say to that is one of your greatest assets will always be time. And if you can pick one thing and put time to it now, you'll benefit so much more for it in the future.
Awesome. And
things are just like you were sort of saying, things are a whole lot more complicated now than they used to be. I feel it's quite easy for someone who bought a house in 1970 to 80s to kind of explain how, you could get on the property ladder, or how you could do this with your money, et cetera. It's times are different now. Times are completely different in terms of how much we're getting paid, how we're moving up the career ladder, how income's coming in, how we can earn it. Things are so different now. So it's kind of you can't really compare the two situations as well.
Back in the day, you'd have a one parent would work and one would stay at home. Now both parents have to work because they both have to pay for the property. And it's there's the quality of life for everybody has gotten progressively worse and worse because their money isn't buying them the same things that it used to. So if you saw property prices go up, most people think, oh, wow, I'm so great because I bought something that's gone up. The same would apply to a mobile phone. My iPhone, it's got the 3 cameras in the back. That costs $3,000. Who would have thought $3,000 for a mobile phone, right? It's crazy. But the cost of everything has just gone up so unattainable. Has the property gotten any better? It's not the property that's gone up, it's the money that's bought less. So you need more of that money to buy the same good. And until they start printing money, we're not going to see a change on that front. I think,
true.
Yeah. So any more tips that you've got for millennials that are trying to get...
Oh, honestly, there's been so many little tips and hacks. And I think the interesting thing is that a lot of people just need to get started. Oftentimes they haven't even started that journey, and there's a lot of procrastination around it because they don't know where to start. But yeah, I would get educated, especially on things I know in New Zealand, So our retirement scheme is KiwiSaver, and it's a huge thing that people just don't understand. But it's something that could be so easy to change and have a long-term effect on your life. Like even just understanding that, one, it's an investment, and two, you can change your your fund based on your risk profile, and those sort of things could dramatically affect your situation in retirement. The same with just putting a little bit of money away into your own independent investments each paycheck. It's like just little things like that, and understanding how you can make your money work for you. Even just tiny changes have such huge benefit, and will change your outcome 50 years down the track or whenever you're actually needing it.
Yeah. I think it's a long game that you need to be playing, and everyone
totally thinking long term.
Yeah. And I guess from your side, like, how can people find more information about what you're doing with the OneUp Project and get more involved with what you're doing?
So the main like resource I have is the podcast, which is just the OneUp Project on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I assume that's where most people would listen. But otherwise, I'm mostly active on the Instagram, which is at the OneUp Project, and we have a lot of discussions on there. We do a lot of lives, and just talk about all sorts of different things to do with financial literacy and career. And I think the thing that I quite enjoy about it for me is that I'm not the expert on the show. I'm just learning alongside everyone else, making mistakes, recording those mistakes. I'm super vulnerable with with showing my money situation. Like, I'd happily share a screenshot of my bank account. I don't care if people think I've got no money or a lot of it for having a financial literacy podcast. It's all about just getting comfortable with having those conversations around money and opening it up, because if you don't, then you're never going to learn yourself. And I think that it's just unfair that people can't have those open and honest conversations, and we can't talk about things as simple as how much we earn without getting, kind of uncomfortable. So there's just little things like that I try to change in the way that I act, and hopefully other people can learn from that over on the Instagram and the podcast.
Awesome, Sarah. Awesome. I appreciate that. And with thanks for sharing that. And with, I guess, people say you shouldn't be talking controversial topics in life. And I never really thought about it, because every day when I'm talking, I just talk about money like it's nothing, right? It's just like it's a part of conversation. But there is, I guess, so many households you're not allowed to talk about that. This is what we're going to talk inside these two parameters and not go outside of that. So it's important. So, appreciate what you're doing there. And for all of the listeners of our podcast here, make sure we go and follow the OneUp Project on Spotify and on Instagram. And if anyone needs any help in Australia and what we do here, you can hit us up at Google, Spotify, or at YouTube, and you call us at 1300 367 925. So thanks a lot for being on the show today, Sarah, and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you've been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I've never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all telling lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite of Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking, my time is never wasted.